Hey, it's Safir Krieger here, and I've been truly concerned about the general advice around the shadow integration process. Instead of people reading Carl Jung's books, they come up with the craziest things. So first of all, you never integrate the shadow by journaling or doing weird meditations and visualizations. This is just a bunch of nonsense and will get you stuck. In fact, many people report feeling worse after they undertake these practices. If you want to truly integrate the shadow, you have to learn the original psychological principles postulated by Carl Jung. So in this video, we will cover three things. What is the shadow and how to integrate it, how to combat the greatest enemy of shadow integration that get people stuck, and finally, how to uncover the good qualities of your shadow. So according to Carl Jung, the shadow contains repressed and undeveloped aspects of our personality, and you probably felt its effects many times in your life. You know when you're so mad that you say and do things that you immediately regret? Well, whenever you feel like you're not yourself, act compulsively, or give in to an addiction, these are the works of the shadow. It feels like something completely external to us is pulling the strings and we're just a puppet. That's why Carl Jung says the shadow has a possessive quality. But contrary to popular belief, the shadow isn't made of only undesired qualities. The shadow is neutral, and the true battle often lies in accepting the good qualities of our shadow, such as our hidden talents, creativity, and all of our untapped potential. But we'll get to that in a moment. Carl Jung explains that the personal shadow is mainly formed by complexes, and they are the real puppet masters behind every symptom of anxiety, depression, and toxic relationship patterns. And these complexes produce narratives in our minds that can distort our interpretation of reality and shape our sense of identity. For instance, when you're dealing with an inferiority complex, you usually have this nasty voice in your head telling you that you're not enough, you don't matter, and you'll never be able to be successful and you'll probably just die alone. I know it's horrible. And you live in fear and you never go after what you truly want because deep down you feel like you don't deserve it. And secretly, you feel jealous of the people who have success, but you're afraid to put yourself out there. Then you settle for mediocre relationships and a crappy job. So when you're under the influence of the shadow, it fucking hurts. And it feels like there's no way out because there are stories playing on repeat in our minds, dragging us down and influencing our actions and decisions. And the only way to break free from these narratives is by first taking the time to understand them. There are complexes around money and achieving financial success, about our self-image, our capabilities, and the list goes on. Complexes are dependent on our personal experiences, but the origin of many of these narratives is the mother and father complex, and you can learn more about that in my video about the poor and puerilitarness. Complexes are also the basis for our projections and directly influence our relationships. This means that we unconsciously engage with people to perpetuate these narratives. For instance, someone with intimacy issues will have an unconscious tendency to go after emotionally unavailable people who can potentially abandon them, or they will find a way to sabotage a relationship as soon as it starts to get serious. That's why complexes feel like a curse. We find ourselves living the same situations over and over again. And one of the most important keys to integrating the shadow is learning how to work with our projections, as everything that is unconscious is first encountered projected. And I won't get technical in this video, but you can find a step-by-step to integrate the shadow in my book Pistis, Demystifying Jungian Psychology. And you can grab your copy when you join my newsletter. But after all of that, you must be thinking that complexes can only be bad. I mean, is there even hope? Well, it's our conscious attitude that determines how these complexes will operate. For instance, most people have a bad relationship with anger and do everything they can to repress it, thinking it's the works of Satan. The problem is that the more we repress it, the more it rebels against us. That's why when it finally finds an outlet, it is this huge possessive thing. However, when anger is properly channeled, it gives us the ability to say no and place healthy boundaries. It can give us the courage to end bad relationships and becomes an important fuel to help us achieve our goals, such as our independence and financial success. So if you take only one thing from this whole video, remember this. The key to integrating the shadow lies in transforming our perception of what's being repressed and taking the time to give these aspects a more mature expression through concrete actions. For instance, most people nowadays don't pay attention to their creativity and think it's completely useless to have an unproductive hobby. And as a result, they tend to be restless, emotionally dry, and have the wildest dreams with beasts and weird animals pursuing them. Well, usually when something is pursuing us in a dream, it's because it is trying to reach our conscious mind, but it can't because of our rigid conscious attitude. And the form of a beast also indicates how repressed it is. And this obviously depends on context, and it can be a positive or negative aspect. But more often than not, we are resisting integrating positive aspects of our personality and our creative potential. This leads us to my final point, and I will quote Carl Jung here. Insight into the myth of the unconscious must be converted into ethical obligation. So the shadow holds the key to uncovering our hidden talents, being more creative, building confidence, creating healthy relationships, and achieving meaning and purpose. But there's a huge problem. My experience as a therapist taught me that 99% of people know exactly what they want in life and what they have to do. However, they allow fear to get in the way. That's why the greatest enemy of shadow integration is not transforming these insights into practical action. This leads to being stuck in the past and being completely engulfed by the overwhelming negative emotions of our shadow. The first thing that traumatic experiences do is make us disconnect from our bodies and the practical aspects of life. We are never present. That's why journaling, meditations, and visualizations tend to make people feel worse. It promotes passivity. People get stuck in their heads and never embody their discoveries. And Carl Jung never proposed anything like that. He constantly focused on the importance of concrete action. Moreover, the body is one of the main expressions of eros and our instinctual life. But in today's society, it's been completely relegated to the shadows. It's rare to find someone who's in touch with their own emotional natures and truly accepts and lives in their bodies. What ends up happening is that this split is compensated by vices, addictions, and compulsions. That's why body work and approaches like somatic experiencing can be extremely important to integrate the shadow. And I explored this in my video, How to Truly Heal from Trauma. So as a rule of thumb, I don't recommend exploring the unconscious if you can't emotionally regulate first and have solid roots in reality, such as healthy habits, good relationships, and you dedicate yourself to doing meaningful work. Finally, the general advice around shadow work is to find the roots of your trauma, and if it's not working, it's because you didn't go deep enough. Sure, it is important to understand the origins of neurosis. However, this approach is too intellectual and always leads to excessive rationalizations. People get addicted to reading book after book and watching video after video, but they never do anything in real life and get engulfed by the shadow. So let's say you always wanted to be a musician or a writer, an architect, whatever. But you never went for it because you didn't want to disappoint your parents and you doubted your capabilities. So you choose a different career and these talents are now repressed. After a few years, you realize that you must attend this calling. And you can spend some time learning why you never did it in the first place, like how you gave up on your dreams and have bad financial habits just like your parents, or how you never felt you were good enough because you experienced toxic shame. And this is important in the beginning to evoke new perspectives and help challenge these beliefs. But most people stop there. But in the end, the only thing that matters is what you do with your insights. You can only integrate the shadow by devoting time and energy to developing these repressed aspects and making practical changes. In this case, you need to make time to write, maybe take classes. You have to decide if this is a new career or if it will remain like a sacred hobby. You integrate the shadow and further your individuation journey by doing and following your fears. That's why filling out prompts will get you nowhere. If you realize you have codependent behaviors, for instance, you don't have to keep digging. You have to focus on fully living your life, exploring your talents, and developing intrinsic motivation. And by the way, I have a great video about this called The Definitive Guide to Overcome Love Addiction. Lastly, working with prompts goes completely against what Carl Jung proposed with his active imagination method. For journaling to be effective, you need to have a living dialogue with the unconscious. And this only happens when you engage with automatic writing and then challenge the answer you receive. It's a dialectical procedure between the conscious ego and the unconscious perspective. But even this will be useless if you don't act on your discoveries. With dreams, it's the same thing. We constantly receive messages from the unconscious and interpreting it is the easy part. What matters is if you follow it. So I hope you understand that I'm not against journaling and meditation because I do it every week. I'm against how people use it in this context because I honestly find 99% of the advice around shadow work completely useless. And I constantly see people on Reddit saying how they were traumatized by doing it. So you shouldn't play with the unconscious. You have to respect it and be careful. So if you want a guide that follows Carl Jung's original method, I invite you to check my accessible course Catabasis, the Shadow Integration Manual. I cover all the theory as well as the practical aspects. And if you want to learn all of Carl Jung's theory, I invite you to check the Audacity University, where you can access a 4-year Jungian psychology curriculum and learn about the shadow, the psychological types, dream interpretation, active imagination, and also the animus and anima. All links are in the description. Oh, and don't forget to grab your copy of my book Pistis, Demystifying Jungian Psychology. Like the video. If you have any questions, comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.